And thank you for joining me in this edition of the Brian Sussman Show Podcast. Here we are, decision day just around the corner. I know we're all hoping and praying that Kamala does not win, but we also know that there is such a thing as institutionalized cheating, whereby the left in various states has put in place systems that are now perfectly legal, whereby they can better manipulate the vote. Everything from ballot harvesting to the way the votes are now counted. I mean, think about this. It's not just early voting, but in some cases, it's early voting. In most cases, it's early voting without showing any proof of who you are or that you're a citizen of the United States of America. In California, it's gotten so bad that early voting begins 30 days before the election, and the counting of the votes is allowed to continue for 30 days after. And if you are an election worker and you dare ask anyone for identification, especially proof of citizenship, it's against the law. So there is cheating that's been institutionalized in America, and that's very, very problematic. It varies, of course, from state to state. That's because we are a representative republic with 50 different republics. The state of California is the most wild, but then there are other states where they allow voting to be conducted only with paper ballots, and those paper ballots will be counted accordingly, kind of like the way it used to be. But in this particular podcast, I want to just share what you already know. Everything's on the line. But I want to talk about my wheelhouse, which is the environment. In my most recent book, Climate Cult, Exposing and Defeating Their War on Life, Liberty, and Property, and let me just stop by saying this. The climate agenda really hasn't made itself onto the front pages of this election campaign season. You're not hearing Donald Trump talk about it a lot, and you're certainly not hearing the other side talk about it almost at all. There's a reason for that. It's because the Democrats, I believe, have rightly figured that a lot of people are onto this. They understand that these environmental policies that are put forward exacerbate the price of oil and gas, and therefore we pay more at the pump, and our electricity bills go through the roof. And you're encouraged to purchase a car that you don't want because it's electric. People are seeing through the sham. And the Democrats don't want to talk about it, especially because Kamala Harris is so radical on this particular topic, as I will prove in just a moment. And isn't it also interesting? She's the one who has said, well, I don't want to ban fracking. Well, why is she saying that? Because there are 19 electoral votes in Pennsylvania that she wants. She was always against fracking. She's always been against any kind of drilling. She's always been against fossil fuels. She's one of those people that really believes we could have a net zero grid. I talk about that at length in Climate Cult as well. Climate Cult, exposing and defeating their war on life, liberty, and property. See, Kamala Harris is one of those people that believes with a net zero grid, we could do what Princeton has anticipated us doing, have most of the grid run off of solar and wind. Now, how much area would be required for all that? Well, in terms of the solar, 17.5 million acres. That's basically northern Indiana. And for the wind, 250 million acres. That's, are you ready for this? That's Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Illinois, and then the other half of Indiana. That's 250 million acres of wind turbines. Forget about birds. They'll be killed by the wind turbines. Forget about the wind turbines that break and have to be replaced, et cetera. Oh, they'll be made in China, where they don't have any regulations regarding their dirty coal plants. This is the plan they have for America. Now, Kamala Harris can talk all she wants. I gave you the tie vote in the Senate that allowed for fracking. Well, that's actually kind of true. It was the tie vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the biggest green boondoggle in the history of the United States of America. It gives $400 billion to various stupid green programs that will do nothing to lower the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere, but it will do everything to load the pockets of nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, early investors in various technologies, a big bank. It also allowed for $43 billion in tax credits to be available to people who want to buy electric vehicles. So the way it works is this: you can buy that Tesla. Let's say the Tesla costs, $77,500. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and get a 7-year loan for that car. So your payments will be huge, nearly $1,000 a month. Your payments are just going to be way up there. But for your down payment, you'll be able to get a tax credit. Generally speaking, tax credits are available at the end of the tax year. But with this particular deal, if the car lot signs up with the Treasury, they can actually, upon you signing the dotted line to buy that electric vehicle, they can get your $7,500 as a down payment right now. So yes, she voted to ban fracking, or she voted to allow for fracking, but the fracking portion of that bill was only placed in the bill to get people who might be Republicans to vote for the bill because, hey, it allows for fracking. It was just a giveaway. It was a compromise for their green boondoggle to the tune of $400 billion. These are the plans that they have for us. Again, they want to regulate the way you live. They want to use environmental policies to control you. This is something that started, as you know, from reading Climate Cult. This started in the mind of Frederick Engels, Marx's writing partner. He was talking about global cooling in 1883. And then there was a series of Marx's disciples who decided our best tool for moving the dial on communism is to use the environment as a weapon to pummel the people into submission. You look at Vladimir Lenin when he was the first ruler of the Soviet Russia. He was writing environmental decree after environmental decree to control the people, to the point where they couldn't even collect firewood that was on the ground. It was illegal. That's why people were freezing to death. There was no more hunting. That's why people were starving to death. People weren't allowed in the forest. He created nature preserves that were off limits, very much like many of the federal nature preserves and state nature preserves we have today. If you get off the little pathway, there's an armed guard to get you back on. These are the games they play. But I want to share with you something that hasn't come out in this current campaign. Everyone knows who AOC is. She's a radical. She's a radical. Let me do a screen share here really quick. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, aka AOC, sponsor of the Green New Deal, which, thank God, never saw the light of day. But there were some Republican estimates the Green New Deal would cost $93 trillion if completed. I don't know, but McKinsey and Company said that it would be about $500 billion. Either way, it was another one of these green giveaways that empower nonprofits, empower NGOs, and create a lot of low-level jobs with people installing weather stripping, and give some handouts to early investors who are putting together, new ways to do solar, like Cylinder or something like that. This was just a way to reward their faves and curry favor with the people that they want to maintain as a voting bloc. So she was sponsored the new Green Deal. We don't have time to sit on our hands as our planet burns, AOC has said. For young people, climate change is bigger than election or re-election. It's life or death. But interesting, Kamala isn't talking a lot about that, is she? It's because if you were to know how radical she is, she's as radical, at least, as AOC. Now, how can I prove that? Real simple. Kamala Harris, by the way, as senator, had one of the worst voting records in the entire Senate. She didn't show up for votes. She didn't show up for work most of the time. It's kind of like she was doing as vice president. Wasn't there a lot of time. What was she doing? I believe that she was currying favor with people in D.C., shaking hands, making the rounds, making friends. And guess who was one of her great friends? You've never seen them on the campaign trail together by design. AOC. AOC is one of her great friends in Congress. They have a lot in common. And I wish I would have included this in the book, but I only found out about this recently. Together, these two sponsored the Climate Equity Act of 2020. Now, whenever you hear the term climate, or excuse me, whenever you hear the term equity, remember this. It means get even. Get even. The Climate Equity Act of 2020. This was an outrageous bill, required relevant federal grant making and investment programs to undergo review to ensure that these are people, you know, in the inner city communities, frontline communities, inner city communities benefit. So nonprofits, NGOs serving these communities, as well as redistribution to members of these communities, keep them as a handy voting block, keep them down for the count, keep them available by targeting investments and addressing existing barriers. Establish an independent Office of Climate and Environmental Justice Accountability, the Office of Climate and Environmental Justice Accountability. So I wonder what they're going to do to people who are like me, countering their rhetoric with the truth. I wonder if we'll be guilty of some kind of crime. Made up of members and allies of frontline communities to represent the views of frontline communities in rulemaking at the beginning of the rulemaking process. Establish a new position of Director for Climate and Environmental Justice. That sounds frightening to me. The kind of power a person like this would have to shut down opposition, to ensure compliance and coordination. This will be across the board, every agency. It's going to be in the military. They'll start employing environmental requirements on our military. Well, you can't be using that jet. It uses too much fuel. It's all in the book, Climate Cult. And that's why we need to stop this woman. Now, can I tell you something regarding this particular bill, the Climate Equity Act of 2020? This thing was so crazy liberal that they could not get another co-sponsor. It was too liberal for the likes of Bernie Sanders. No one wanted to touch this, and therefore, thank God, it never got a vote. But this is how left of center Kamala Harris is. And my friends, we can't allow her to gain victory. We cannot allow her. We have to get out the vote. And we've got to get on our knees and pray for this nation. Because the left is without a moral spine. While we understand good and evil, truth and a lie, while we understand these principles of right and wrong, they understand them as well. But they don't see a consequence in going the opposite way and doing whatever it takes, lie, cheat, steal, doesn't matter what it takes to win. That's how they feel about it. Just win, baby, win. That's all they care about. The climate change agenda is really at the center of their plans to control the way you live. And we can't allow this to happen. I thank you, by the way, for your readership of Climate Cult. I really do appreciate that. For such a time as this. But our time before this election is running out. And we need to do everything possible to make sure that this woman does not win. And I fear if she does, there's going to be retribution. There's going to be hell to pay for those who vehemently disagreed with her, for those who were against her campaign speaking out. I fear the government agencies will be weaponized to take care of those people, just like you saw, for example, with Steve Bannon, just like you saw, for example, with Peter Navarro, just like you saw, for example, with all of those many people who were at the J6 event, who are still behind bars having never seen really a day in court. That's horrid. So, my friends, I say it with all sincerity. God bless the United States of America, comma, please. Thanks for watching. More on me at briansussman.com. God bless you, my friends.